if revenue is for vanity and profits, net income are for sanity, cash flows for stress reduction.
Oof.
Great.
Nice.
Your whole business is on annual recurring revenue and you're dependent on massive lumps to come in all the time. That's great because your lifetime value of the client is now annually based. But if you can start shifting those clients to MRR and saying, hey, what's our monthly recurring? The lifetime value of the client actually goes up and then they continue on because they're looking for automation.
What if you could build a business in the modern world as big or as small as you want without having to compromise the things that were the most important to you in the very beginning? This is the Wealthy Consultant Talks podcast with Taylor Welch and Mike Walker, as they share with you today their learning lessons from stories in their experiences over the past 10 to 15 years and share with you right here, right now. Let's get into it.
What is going on, my friends? Mike Walker here with another episode of the Wealthy Consultant Podcast, TWC Talks. So glad to have you with us today. I've got a special guest with me, Mr. Chris Robinette, top-ranked financial planner and wealth strategist, and the founder of Lighthouse Planning. So we're going to dig into all things money, mindset, economy. Who knows? I don't know where we're going to go. We're going to go down some rabbit holes probably, but yeah, man, I'm excited. So let's get into it. I've already given the short version, but give us a little taste. What's your background? Where are you from? Yeah, for sure. Tell us a little bit about yourself, man.
So pretty easy. I was boring growing up. Grew up in Oklahoma City. We moved outside of town, got a ranch. Never saw my friends because we moved to 70 acres, but had a golf cart, had a couple horses and a BB gun and then a shotgun. And I was like, this is perfect. Living the life.
Hey.
And so, I decided I didn't want to be landlocked in Oklahoma. So took a path and changed and went to the Naval Academy. So I was right there on the bay in Annapolis. From there, did 8 years as an officer. So drove ships out of Hawaii. We were in Iraq in 2005, doing a lot of fun stuff over there. Came back, went and got a nuclear engineering degree because I just wasn't done yet. And from there, I went up to Newport News and Norfolk, Virginia to build the Bush aircraft carrier. So number 2 reactor is one of my children, and commissioned her. Had a great photo. I got 41 on this arm. I got 43 on this arm. And I got his big bronze statue behind us with his plane and him and everything. Never found the photo ever again. So I think someone had the lens on or something. So I'm like, well, it lives in my memory forever. And
it's amazing. It's a sight to behold.
From there, taught 2 years of college at the University of Oklahoma, getting my MBA. Got out of the Navy, moved to Nashville, and so for 13 years now, man, I've been running and gone and doing financial planning, wealth management, all things money and legacy has really kind of grown into a big component of where a lot of my focus and change is coming in life. And so I helped co-found a firm in 2014. About 2019, we realized we had way too many advisors. Everybody had different ideas how to do things. And so I went and launched Lighthouse at the end of 2019, which is a great time to start a company. If anybody guessed, just a few short months later, the world just said, "Hey, you know what? Nobody wants to spend money. We're not going anywhere and stay inside." So,
right, yeah, no doubt, man. You weren't the only one that's feeling that switch up for sure. No, that's awesome, man. Well, one of the things I was excited to talk to you about was the fact that, in our space, in the consulting space in particular, but basically anywhere, you see it online a lot, people pumping their revenue numbers or, it's like the trophy they hold, right? Like, well, my company, we're on path to generate X number of dollars, per year or whatever. And I've always kind of like subscribed to the concept that revenue is for vanity, but net or profit is for sanity. And no one talks about like the difference. They're just too busy wanting to throw up some commas and zeros to boast about. But really, it's not about so much about what you make; it's about what you keep. And I know that's a big component of like what you help people do. So I was kind of interested to go down that road with you a little bit,
I love,
and maybe kind of help
when we talk to people and they're like, "Hey, my run rate was this," and I'm like, "Great, what does that even mean?" Because they don't know. I literally
Right.
I have a very successful client that was in the payment processing space who just sold his company for several $1,000,000 and is now focused way harder on his VA business. And we were talking earlier this week because a lot of his business comes from entrepreneurs and social media and stuff like that. So that's, he'll see things and people add him. And we were talking, he's like, how is everybody at a 9-figure run rate all of a sudden? Like, no, like how, what is going on? Like, did all of our friends group explode? And so we were sitting there talking, cause there's a person we both know that was boasting they did 6 million revenue last year and they were just absolutely crushing their industry. And then just yesterday they posted that they're on a 9-figure run rate after having a killer June. And so we're like, all right, so do we just take all your numbers that you did in June, divide by or multiply by 12 and then add some form of growth every single month that you're going to continue just so we got there? Like, and so it's
Right.
funny.
Yeah.
I feel a lot like what you were saying. There's so much vanity in revenue because we're so dopamine driven on where that next hit is coming from. And so many people get like in their own fields is the easiest way to put it on like, I can't believe this other person's doing better than me. I got to do better than them. And they'll throw $1 million a month at ads to make 1.1 million, but they'll be like, hey, it doesn't matter. Look at my revenue, but there's no income,
Right.
like you were saying. So I like your approach, but I like to actually go one further because if revenue is for vanity and profits, net income are for sanity, cash flows for stress reduction, So it's like,
Oof.
great.
Nice.
Is your whole business is on annual recurring revenue and you're dependent on massive lumps to come in all the time. That's great because your lifetime value of the client is now annually based. But if you can start shifting those clients to MRR and saying, hey, what's our monthly recurring? The lifetime value of the client actually goes up after you've fulfilled and delivered typically over the first 3 to 6 months that you've had them. And then they continue on because they're looking for automation. They're looking for easy and they don't want to deal with like, oh, here's a new invoice and it's a massive chunk of money again. Cause you don't know when they're buying their next piece of equipment. You don't know when they're buying that next hire. You don't know when the tax bill came because now you're hitting them in, June or October and you're like, hey, I know you just paid $150,000 of taxes, but I'm going to need to give me that $32,000 also this week,
That's right.
So a lot of coaching that I've been doing, I mean, especially with several clients that I've had for years now, we've been shifting them to monthly cash flow, even with our firm, because most of them were managing cash accounts for them anyways, because we're getting 5%. So we're like, hey, let's just put your business entity accounts in here too. Now we're getting 5% versus, 0.1% at Bank of America, or Chase or any of the other big ones that just aren't really paying. They still have an account and routing number. They could still write checks. They could still ACH, but we have a methodology to now when they're storing $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 in their entity, it's like, why not just park that in a little bit higher savings and then keep, 4 to 6 weeks at their Chase Bank or wherever they want to use their credit card at. And, that I found has not only allowed them to be more efficient with their money, but they also now can start saying, hey, I want to put some more auto drafts in because I realized I got 400,000 kind of sitting in this pool. And so, we've seen clients take annual bonuses and start dragging them out to monthly bonuses and shifting them just to help differing cash flow. So they're not having a $20,000, $30,000, $50,000 bonus in December. They're having a $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 bonus across each month. And then they can actually help drive performance because people are more likely, as you shrink the deadline on something, right? So, if I give you 4 days to go do a project, you'll get it back to me in 3.5 days. If I give you 4 weeks to do it, you'll get it back to me in 3.5 weeks because we prioritize so much in our life. If someone gives you a long enough deadline, you'll drag out until that becomes a higher priority because there's other things that are on fire right now that we have to kind of get at. So I've actually seen a lot of increased productivity from clients because they've even changed their bonus structure and they can regulate it even more. And so, we do a lot of financial planning. I finished pretty highly ranked last year, kind of amongst my peers. And a lot of the best practice things that I've gone and talked to them have all kind of been the same thing. Like, hey, how are you helping clients manage cash flow? How are you helping them increase income? And there's not a lot of conversations coming out of our world on like, how are we jacking up their revenue? We can't sell off of revenue. I mean, some people can, but most of it's EBITDA. Most of it's what's your net income and what's kind of multiple can we get? If your cash flow is increased, your multiple will be increased because companies want to buy your subscriber base. They want to see that you put 2, 3, 5 years into building this clientele, building this monthly revenue. And then they'll come in and pay you a premium because you just saved them 5 years of not having to go build it themselves. They just want to come in and manage it, increase operational efficiency, and then scoop it up. And so even that with a lot of our entrepreneur friends, I've been seeing different sales consulting teams buying and merging in with other sales consulting teams because it's easier to buy someone who's been doing it for 3, 4, 5 years is kind of getting tired of doing it than it is that, hey, I'm just going to keep building and growing, building and growing, building and growing. And so maybe that's how some of these people are getting to 9-figure run rates. They bought 3 other companies that were doing way better, but now I'm winning. Who knows?
Right. Well, yeah, there's always more told behind the curtains that we don't always see for sure. I know, and everything you're saying there perfectly dovetails in with the fact that we've gotten such a huge response from Taylor's book he put out, The Revolving Price Method. That was pretty revolutionary for a lot of, it was a big one for a lot of people. And by the nature of my position here at TWC, working with all our chamber clients, it's been really cool to see some of the stories, the firsthand stories of those, the feedback and the results that come with doing exactly what you're talking about, moving to more of a monthly MRR, and obviously increases the multiple opportunity for an exit later and all those things. What would you say are some of the,
if you knew, hey, I have a 90% retention in the first 3 months, and I have an 80% retention in the first 6 months, and I have an ongoing 75% retention over 12 months. And then you built an MRR model into that. And now it's July, right? So next month is August. You're going to roll into the end of Q3. You can already forecast October based on everything that's happened from last October all the way till now on potential monthly revenue. You can offset for the percentages of retention loss that you have. But now you can start earlier deciding, hey, get me out of the slinky effect of big month, bad month, big month, bad month. It's a lot steadier. It's more of that ratchety, tickety on the roller coaster, right? Because now you can decide, hey, based on MRR or growth, I can easily afford that next staff member in October. So let me go look in August to start recruiting. So I have 2 months to recruit and fill that position and train them.
Totally. Makes you more predictive.
That's like what I love about having these business coaching, consulting, financial planning goals is how do we get predictable? And then how do we start automating it so you don't stress out so much? And the less you stress, the lower your cortisol. The lower your cortisol, the more creative you are. The more creative you are, more likely you're going to sell more stuff because you have a new offer, you have a new product, you have a new thing you've done, which is going to grow your revenue. So,
yes, yeah, it's a flywheel effect for sure.
Yeah, total.
No, I love that. Yeah, definitely. What would you say? How does someone know when they are in a position to start engaging your services? There's probably a lot of listeners out there going like, man, this sounds good. Like I need this, but I don't know if I'm ready or not. What does that look like? How do you guide someone through that decision process?
I'd say it varies a lot. Each industry is kind of uniquely different. I used to be like, hey, if you're doing $400,000 or $500,000 a year revenue, you probably need to be talking to a financial planner. I still feel that, but if you think about it, if you're doing 400,000, you're only at a 20% profit margin. You're only making 80K. So you don't need extensive tax strategy. You may need some business planning. You may want to make sure you're shifted, making 80K profits is still something in the tax bracket. So you may want to make sure your company is shifted and set up properly So now you're talking to the business attorneys. Now you may talk to your accountant, CPA. I'm like, hey, here's where we're going, but you probably don't need super intense strategy because you're not doing a lot. However, it's very expensive to live lately. Inflation's up, costs of goods are up, everything across the board is up. So if you're making 80K and you're single, you probably are living. If you're making 80K and you're married, you're probably a little tight. If you're making 80K and you're married and you have a couple kids, you probably don't have $2 to rub together. And so it gets kind of hard looking at like financial planners like us because we charge an annual engagement fee so that our clients can kind of talk to us whenever they want. That way it's not, hey, I'm billing you hourly and maybe you call me, maybe you don't because you're like, crap, I don't want to pay this bill this month, And so I've found the people that are most successful are typically new money. They're starting to grow. They're on that on-ramp. They're at about 10 to 15K a month in profits or, take home before taxes and stuff like that. And so that puts them about 120 to 180 in that income bracket. And so now they're starting to make money for the first time and they want to make good decisions. They want to be a steward of what they're doing because they don't want to go out and just blow. What happens is a lot of times in these spaces, we get an offer, something hits, somebody instantly makes 70, 80K of revenue that month. It's, minus ad spend, maybe it's 30, 40% profit margin all of a sudden. So now they go from 5 to 6 to 7 to 30, 35. And they get this in their head. Oh, I have so much money, more than I've ever had in my life. I don't need somebody. I probably should get a tax strategist person to help me reduce my taxes because now I'm at 400,000. That's the only thing I care about is how do I reduce my taxes? The problem is if you look at a dog, the dog is your income. The tail is your taxes. And you don't let the tail wag the dog. The dog wags the tail. And unfortunately, most tax strategy people are like, what can we save you today? Because their job is like, what can I save you today? So you got value out of me. So you'll hire me again. Because heaven forbid we don't save money this year. You're going to fire me. But I think that's a fallacy because we send a lot of clients, especially when we're rolling over IRAs from old 401ks and stuff like that. We'll start sending a lot of their money to Roth. And so we'll do conversions from the IRA to the Roth based on their free cash flow, based on their age, and based on it, like if it makes sense in their particular situation. They may actually spend money in taxes because they have to take it as income, but then it's tax-free forever. And so the CPA,
it's a longer term picture,
like, oh, but I was going to save you $50,000 in taxes. And you just converted $150,000 over to Roth. So now I can't save you anything in taxes. Woe is me. You're going to fire me. But the really good strategists are like, hey, this is actually amazing. We were saving 50K. Now we're going to break even right to where we were. And you just moved $150,000 of money into a tax-free bucket that's going to grow forever and never pay taxes again. And so a lot of people kind of struggle with this, especially when I'm dealing with like higher end doctors. Because they're like, well, here's what they told me in medical school, and that's what it's got to be. And that's not what it is. You got the Susie Orman and the Dave Ramseys of the world. Their whole pitch is spend less money, lower your income, spend less money, lower your income, pay down your debt, spend less money, spend less money. So if you do a conversion and it makes income that we have to pay taxes on, it goes completely against the ideology teachings that they're doing. So that's where it kind of gets a little tricky because should they be engaging our services? Yes, but they have to decide they're ready to be on a journey that's separate from what the talking heads are saying on TV, that's separate from, their parents who maybe never made more than $90,000 a year. And their parents that they came from were saving Cool Whip containers and Tupperware because they just came growing up post-depression, rationing World War II. As we're getting older and older, we're kind of getting away from all that, But now you got people that are like, I don't understand why you don't have bonds. Well, when your parents were growing up in the 70s and 80s and bonds were at 18%, that was an amazing investment. 2020, bonds were at 0, maybe 1. Like if you locked in 30 years at a 1% investment, you're crazy. Nobody would have wanted to do that. And so then as interest rates start going up, bond prices are going to fall. And so that's where the planning side, we have to do a very good job of being extremely empathetic to our client's unique situation. And we also take that situation and go figure out what their vision is. And if I can figure out their vision, it's not me painting the story for how I want them to do things. It's, hey, here's how you want to do things. Let's paint the story to make all these things happen. But let's make sure we're wanting to do the right thing. So we'll spend more time on mindset. It's like, hey, is this, like I was speaking with an attorney yesterday. We had to get her some term insurance. She's like, my mom says I don't need term insurance, so I'm probably not going to get any. I'm like, okay, why is that? Well, I don't know. She said, I just don't need to spend money on that yet. So we talked through the whole thing. By the time we get done, her mom had never made more than $50,000 a year. Her mom was living paycheck to paycheck for 20 years. Her mom helped her get through all these different things, like super mom. Don't get me wrong. But mom's everything was like, you have to save that $50 a month. You can't be spending that. You can't die. But people say that. And I just had to fly to Dallas to help a client with their estate because the husband was making $600,000 a year for almost 15 years. And he had $1.5 million of life insurance. So that's maybe 2.5 times his income. But he had 2 kids, he had $1 million house, he had 2 cars that aren't paid for. They had credit cards, he had medical bills, And so we're going to blow through this $1.5 million of life insurance. We only had $100,000 in retirement accounts, and we can't even use them yet because they're not even old enough to really use them unless we want to pay penalties and stuff on it. And so now their entire lifestyle is going to get completely cratered because they had never built a plan and put some guardrails around themselves. And so I'm very counterintuitive when it comes to our business because no one needs a financial planner. I'm convinced no one actually needs a financial planner. You either want one or you don't. Because every financial planner I know that's actually good at what they do, their whole job is like, how do I make you more efficient? How do we free up time, right? Like my goal is to free up 50 to 60 hours a year of my client's time because I can't buy you time. I can buy you assets. I can get you other stuff. But if I can free up 50, 60 hours, that's a vacation you weren't taking with your family. If I can make you go on a staycation for 2 to 3 days with your wife, because you're like, we actually haven't done anything in 5 years because I've been building my company. I'm like, well, great. You've been building your company and completely neglecting your relationships, right? Is that what normal financial planners do? No, but that's what I do. Because if I'm going to tell clients we want a 30-year relationship that turns into 30-year friendships, we have to make sure their relationships with their kids are strong, their parents are strong, their spouse is strong. That way they're comfortable with all the things they're doing so they can have these hard conversations that prevent them from having the divorce, that prevent them from, severing all their assets and then saying, well, everything we've been doing is wrong. But it goes all the way back to that very beginning of like, when should people hire you? And it's like, you have to be in the mindset that you're like, I don't have enough time to do this on my own. I have a lot of questions and I would love to get guidance and advice on how to do it for me. But the best clients that I've ever had are what I call decision-making delegators. They want to help make decisions, and then they want to delegate all the work because they want free time. They want to go on vacation with their spouse. They want someone else watching everything. They want to grow that legacy. And if we can find ways to shrink 2, 3, 4 years off what they're doing by just leveraging our connections and leveraging our knowledge, people will pay you for that.
Yeah. 100%. Well, I've always felt like, especially when it comes down to services and specialists like yourself, it's like either way, we're all paying, every single human on this planet, we're paying somehow. Either we're paying in money or we're paying in time. And to your point, you said, earlier, you can't buy time. So anytime we can speed up the path of profit by, reducing the trial and error and all the things, I mean, it's just a no-brainer, but it does take, insulating ourselves from maybe old ideologies that we were, raised in, or, just the people around us. Like, it's an old saying and I'm probably going to hack it a little bit, but something like, don't take advice from somebody who's not getting the results you want, essentially. Like if you're going to take that advice, make sure that they're already doing what you want or been there and done that. So, no, I love that ideology.
Don't hire a fat trainer.
Exactly.
I think you're
totally
correct on that,
Yeah. So let's wrap up with one last thought. We're going into, at the time of this recording, it is now July 18th. Hard to believe we're already so far into the year. It's amazing. We're going into an election season, the macro economy. There's a whole bunch of different, as there always is, there's always different, tensions internationally and even domestically. What's your take on the current state of the market, and what's got your attention right now as we go into the second half of 2024?
The biggest thing I'm focused on right now is stability. And so it's, if you look at rate of return, it's so subjective because people just assume if I got 15, 20%, I'm killing it. But if I made you 100% on your money, so we went from 100K to 200K. Then I lost you 50% next year. You went from 200K back to 100. But your rate of return is 50% divided by 2. So technically your statement's going to say you averaged 25% over the last 2 years, when you are absolutely right back at zero. And so few people look at sequence of return. So few people look at like how rate of return works. Because a lot of advisors out there and insurance people out there are like, hey, here's the gradual slope we're going to put you on, and just go do this one thing. And here's what all that stuff looks like. And so I'm like, doesn't really help. And so I found stability. If we can minimize downside and then optimize upside. So we're not going to maximize upside. If the market's up 30%, maybe I'm up 20, 25. The market's down 20%, maybe I'm down 5 or 10. Pain is 7 times more important to somebody than pleasure. And so you could have 5 years in a row where you're crushing it. You have one bad year. They're like, I'm out. You screwed my everything up. What's wrong with you? When you have absolutely no control over any of it. And so none of us have a crystal ball.
Sure.
None of us know where the market's going. I feel like a lot of the market's being propped up right now, just kind of across the board to make everything look like things are well. I don't think interest rates are going to stay kind of like where they are. I feel like as we come closer to the election, we'll see one, at least probably two, sometime between September and November, just because things are kind of tapering off and cooling down. So if they're really wanting this soft landing they're talking about, we should start seeing some interest rate reductions. And it's really cash and cash flow. I mean, I think so many people had 3 years without having to pay student loans. Then all of a sudden they came back and they're like, what do you mean I owe $2,500 a month? Because they forget that they were paying $2,500 a month before it got turned off in 2020. And then 3 years later, they're like, I don't understand why I owe this money. I've never paid all this money, but you actually had. But they had reallocated that $2,500 to other things. So now things are really tight. You're like, oh crap, I forgot about that. And then it's like, hey, what's going on with this, this, and this? Why is your credit card so high? Well, because I kind of went on all these vacations because I was sitting on all this cash. And so I don't think the election cycle is going to change a ton on either side. I think the administrations and a lot of all of these cabinet people and whoever comes in needs to start changing our policy, changing the way the U.S. is viewing things. That way we can strengthen the dollar. And by strengthening the dollar is going to help with everything else across the board. But if the dollar keeps weakening, it doesn't really matter if inflation drops to zero. Like the dollar is still going to be losing value to other countries and other goods and services and things we're trying to do. So that's kind of the difference that I think it's not going to really matter with the election. I think it's going to matter more on people kind of reeling themselves in, building a little bit more of a defensive fund. I call it a war chest, but you build a little bit more of a war chest. And then you can take that as opportunity to be like, hey, here's where we want to go hit opportunities when other people who've stretched all their money to nothing and now they're having to sell for way under value. You recognize there's a lot of intrinsic value. And now we can use that war chest to go opportunistically invest into other companies and other things irregardless of interest rates. I mean, interest rates
totally
historically were below the average of interest rates for the last 70 years anyways. So where we're at right now is almost kind of that average. 7-8%. If it's 7-8%, then just deal with it. 7-8%. You're getting 5% on cash, so your spread's still only 2. If you were getting 0% on cash and you're borrowing money at 2, your spread's still 2. And so people aren't relegating
still
it
2, right?
in the more of a macro sense, I think. So you don't want to be saving money, making absolutely nothing on it. You want to kind of start being smarter about where you're putting it. And now it's kind of a saver's paradise right now. Like if you're able to just sit on your hands, be patient, stockpile some cash, reset where all your spending is kind of going, tighten up on a few things so that you have a clearer picture on where you're going. When opportunities open up in front of you, you're completely ready to launch because you're not constantly spending every single month to try something different. A slow, long path consistently in one direction tends to outperform a bunch of just ideas, turns, and everything else people have. So.
Totally. Yeah. Time in the market, not timing the market, right?
Well, I think
Love that.
It said
awesome, man. Well, hey,
10 of the 20 largest days that have ever occurred in the market have occurred directly the day after the worst dip in the market. So if you're in the worst dip and then you sell the next day, you miss the complete rebound. Right.
Yep. No, totally with you. Well, hey, Chris, thank you so much for spending time with us today, man. I'll make sure that your contact information is provided below or around wherever this video and information is posted. But is there anything you want to close in on as we wrap here? What would you want our listeners to know about Lighthouse Planning, yourself, or anything that you do within
I appreciate
strategy
that.
space?
Like I said, for me, it's find people that you can trust, that you can build long-term with. Find someone that understands your unique situation. It doesn't have to be me. Find anyone. We cover 44 states, DC, Puerto Rico. So most of all of our meetings are Zooms anyways. But if you want someone local, ask them some questions. Figure out if they can get behind your unique vision and what you're wanting to do, or if it's just going to be like, buy this one thing and then I'll never call you again. So, I think just having some patience, being willing to kind of sit on your hands, start thinking more where I want to be in 5-10 years, not where I want to be in 3 to 6 months. And then, always happy to do consults, always happy to hop on a Zoom and jam with people for 30, 45 minutes. And, if we're a fit, amazing. I love working with clients. I have 5 other planners on the team right now that all love working with clients. So, even if you're lower income and you don't feel like it's going to be the right fit, it may be with one of the other guys on the team. So don't hesitate to ask questions if you have questions. We always want to be here to help, but just remember at the end of the day, it's really what's best for building your legacy and your future with your family. And then just allowing experts to come in and help guide you along the way. But, at the end of the day, I want you to have your own lighthouse so you can shine out over everybody else and be like, hey, here's the failures I've made. I don't want you to make them so you can be more successful quicker. And I think ultimately when people get to the point that they can share all their experiences, what they've learned, they just make their community and their family that much better and they have more impact.
Love that. Yep. Legacy for sure. No, that's awesome, man. Well, thank you again. And guys, definitely give Chris a look. He and I have known each other. He's worked with Taylor and a lot of our team here as well. So definitely want to vouch for his capabilities and his company, Lighthouse Planning. So give them a look. And then also, if you haven't already, go find the Revolving Price Method, Taylor's book on, all things it's an entire system that we've kind of embedded within Chamber and the Wealthy Consultant, both for our own businesses, but also for the businesses of our clients. And it perfectly fits in line with what Chris has been talking to us about. So combined with that book and Chris's knowledge, you'll be off to a really great start into 2025 as we move forward. Awesome, guys. All right. We'll see you on another episode of TWC Talks. Take care, guys. See ya. Thanks, Chris.